Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Kristen Penchek, and I'm the Managing Director of Audience Engagement here at MPT. We hope you enjoyed the first two episodes of Chesapeake Collectibles Season 11. I don't know about you all, but here at MPT, we are thrilled to have this show back on air. I'm equally thrilled to introduce two of the key people who made this return possible, the producers of Chesapeake Collectibles. They're going to share some of their experiences around the show and answer any questions that you may have. So as a reminder, if there's anything you want to know, please add your questions in the comments and we'll get to as many as we can in just a bit. Without further ado, please welcome executive producer Patrick Keegan and senior producer Barbie Jenkins. Patrick joined MPT as an executive producer in 2022. He currently oversees MPT's lifestyle programming, which includes Chesapeake Collectibles, Destination Maryland, and Made in Maryland. Prior to joining MPT, he worked for Warner Brothers Discovery, producing programming for Animal Planet, Discovery, Science, and Investigation Discovery. Barbie joined MPT just last year as a senior producer and is responsible for creating long-form linear and short-form digital content. She brings more than 2 decades of experience with broadcast cable, national political programs, and political media production. Born and raised in Pittsburgh, Barbie has resided in the DMV since 2001. Welcome, Barbie and Patrick. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kristen.
So before we get to our audience questions, I wanted to start by asking you both a couple of things. As newer arrivals to MPT, how did you approach the challenge of rebooting Collectibles?
We asked a lot of questions about how it was previously made. And fortunately, we had Kristen and her team there to help us out. There is no way Chesapeake Collectibles could happen without you. So on this public forum, I'd like to again thank you for all your help during Chesapeake Collectibles.
Thanks.
One of the things I wanted to do when joining the team was find ways to refresh some of our content. And the fact that Collectibles had been off the air for 3 years was a perfect opportunity to do so, while still paying homage and respecting what had been done in the past. So as you all saw, one of the biggest changes we made was not having a host. Rhea Fiken was the face of MPT, a huge presence at MPT. And when she retired, there was some internal conversation about who's going to replace Rhea. I thought we should try doing Collectibles without a host. Because as far as, when I watch the show, I want to watch the evaluations. I want to see how much the item is worth. And I felt like if we added a new host into the show, it may detract from our ability to tell as many stories as possible. But I also wanted to pay homage to Rhea, which is why we had her as a guest in the very first episode. There were also other things we did, like updating the set. If you've watched the first 10 seasons of Collectibles, you'll notice that the set's a different color. There's some changes to it. It needed some love. It was starting to show some wear and tear. We changed the title sequence. I think change can be good, especially when you've done 10 seasons of a show. You need to keep it, inject some new life into it. And so just changing up the title sequence, I think helped a little bit, and also making it much shorter. Because again, I just want to have as many evaluations and objects and items and great stories in each episode as we possibly can. So it was daunting to take on a beloved show 10 seasons in, but I hope everybody likes what we've done with it.
I would have to agree with you. I think, and I know I'm a little bit biased, of course, but I think the refresh is absolutely incredible. And I agree with a lot of our viewers. MPT, oh my gosh, Rhea is absolutely an MPT treasure. And I love how you paid tribute to her at the very beginning of the first episode. So kudos to you.
And having Barbie by my side has been invaluable as well, because every idea that either of us had, we had somebody to bounce it off. So
absolutely.
Barbie joined, I think, 2 weeks before the taping? About
roughly. That. Yeah, something in there. And from my perspective, coming in very, very fresh, the internal team and all of the departments that have come together over these many seasons, and for this most recent shoot, is just impressive, and everybody was supportive and doing everything they could to make it the best it could be. And just from these first 2 episodes, you can see that it really came together.
Great. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face on taping days?
It's a lot to coordinate. There is so much happening, which is why we have so many volunteers and staff on location. I mean, not only are we making a TV show, it's also a pretty massive event. We have upwards of 1,000 people coming into the building over the course of 2 days, carrying a bevy of items. So it's hard to coordinate that. But I think the biggest challenge and the thing that kept me up at night before we started taping was, how do we maintain a flow of items to the sets so we can shoot about 35 to 40 items in a single day. I think we had probably about 3,000 items come through the door. So we have to be extremely selective, but we want to make sure that we don't, within the first half hour of our doors opening, say, great, we have 35 items that we're going to film today. Everybody else is coming at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Sorry, we already filled all our slots. So we have to be very, very selective. And I think that's the hardest thing, is trying to anticipate, this item that came in at 10 a.m. this morning is fantastic, but is it fantastic enough to actually go on set and be filmed? And I think that's the hardest part. And so that's why, Barbie and her cohort, Jessica, they're on the front line working with the appraisers to make that initial assessment of, is this item worth consideration for taping?
Barbie, what about you?
Yeah, that was trying to keep the flow going. I think that was my concern. That kept me up as well. Is just the flow of people within our set, from a selection to getting signed up to getting through makeup, and making sure we're working with everybody on the floor to optimize that. And so I think it turned out great. I'm looking forward to the upcoming shoot. It's going to be another great couple of days. But that was what kept me up, is just making sure we had it really organized, and we did. And also, just the whole team.
Great. I'm going to sidestep my questions because I think this is a nice segue into a couple of the audience questions already. So with everyone that's in attendance, which we know were gobs of people, how do you decide what items actually make it to the show? And somewhat related, is there an effort made to select items that have regional ties or regional history to the Chesapeake Mid-Atlantic area?
Yeah, as we said, that's the toughest thing, is being selective. But there are a couple of criteria that we have in the back of our head as we're looking at every single thing that comes in. So the most obvious one is the item itself interesting? So, for example, we saw the chap with the collection of Titanic memorabilia. I mean, that was a no-brainer, right? Titanic is ever popular. The taping was, I think, a week or 2 after the story of that submarine that imploded, that was exploring the Titanic. So that segment itself, it felt timely. And it was just a fantastic collection of items. So that's the first one, is this item interesting? Second would be, is there a good story behind it? I mean, anybody can go out, if they're wealthy enough, and buy an expensive painting and then bring it to Chesapeake Collectibles and be told, yep, you spent $50,000 on that painting, it's worth $50,000. That's not a great story. There's no story there. So we always look, well, did you come by the item in an interesting way? Does the item have an interesting history itself? Has it been passed down for generations? Is it somehow connected to a bigger story? Is it illustrative of a moment in Maryland history? So we look at how can we tell a story about this item that gives us a 5, 7, 10-minute segment, not just showing you a thing and saying, look at this thing. We have to find a story. And yes, we always look for items that have a connection to Maryland, obviously, or to the Chesapeake region. That is our viewing area. We know our audience is passionate about this area and want to know stories about this area. So if something is an interesting item, has a good story, is somehow connected to Maryland or the Chesapeake region, it's going to be high on our list of things to bring on set. And of course, the big consideration is how much is it worth?
Sure.
So even if something's worth $50, if it has a great story connected to Maryland and it's unusual or interesting, we will certainly give it consideration. If it's worth $500,000, like an Apple One computer that doesn't really have a connection to Maryland, that's also a no-brainer. Of course, we're going to show that because, well, as of taping, it was the single most valuable item that had ever come to Chesapeake Collectibles. So yeah, there's several things that we have in the back of our head, but it's a constant churn of, okay, is this baseball card better than the one we saw 10 minutes ago? Which one should we bring in front of the camera? So, Barbie, I'm not sure if there were other things that you considered when you were filtering.
No, those were the main topics. But I think at the start of each day, just not knowing what would be coming is just both thrilling and scary at the same time. Fear.
Yeah, because there was also the concern of what if nothing interesting comes in? What do we do? And I'm glad that my fears were completely unfounded because there were so many amazing things that we saw, even ones that didn't make it on TV or we didn't tape. There was just a lot of incredible items. So, even if you attend the taping, which we are doing again in June of next year, or well, this year now, June 2024, you'll meet so many people who have similar interests to you or have fascinating items that they want to talk about. And we keep hearing again and again how exciting the event is and how much fun people have. And I certainly enjoyed it.
Me too.
Again, I'm biased, but I love it. It's one of my favorite events that we do at MPT. So here's a really great question, and we do get this a lot. So just so we can put it out there for the public so everybody knows, because there are only so many items that do get taped, does every item get looked at and appraised, evaluated?
Absolutely. So we have to use the term evaluation. So yeah, even though we have so many items that come in, everybody does get an opportunity to meet with an appraiser and discuss their item. We do limit people to 3 items, and sometimes people will bring a collection of items, which is fine, but it's, if you have a collection of paintings by the same artist, bring 2 or 3 of those paintings. Please don't bring 50. Because our appraisers, they can't sit with you for 4 hours and go through every single one of your paintings because it's unfair to the people standing in line behind you. So everybody is seen. Everybody has an opportunity to meet with an appraiser and discuss. But sometimes the appraiser will tell you, you know what, it's not worth that much, as much as you had hoped, or it's quite a commonly produced item. Sometimes their eyes will light up and it'll be something that excites them and they'll want to talk to you for longer. But absolutely, everybody gets their fair shot to meet with an appraiser.
So what types of items are you perhaps looking for?
So one of my goals is to really lean into the fact that the show is called Chesapeake Collectibles and not called Chesapeake Antiques. As much as we love antiques, and antiques will always be a central part of the show, there are other types of collectibles out there, and we want to encourage people to bring those in. So if you collect sneakers or video game consoles or vinyl records or Magic the Gathering cards, Lego sets, those are collectible items. They're contemporary collectible items, but they're just as interesting to our audience as an antique armoire. So in our marketing outreach, we've really leaned into, hey, we're open to all sorts of collectors from all over the area. Please come to Chesapeake Collectibles and show us what you have, because that toy that you grew up with in the 80s or 70s, may be worth something today. I just wish my parents hadn't thrown out all my He-Man figurines.
That's so true. So here's a fun question. What happens if there's, are there any bloopers that might appear? Are we doing anything with those? Will they appear at any time?
So we haven't announced this publicly yet, but we're currently working on a behind-the-scenes documentary about the making of Chesapeake Collectibles, paying homage to the first 10 seasons. And there will be a collection of bloopers in that, mostly from this most recent taping. But I will say that our appraisers are very good. I mean, they don't make many flubs. I mean, usually if they have to redo something, it's because somebody dropped a light in the background, or in the case of Amory, didn't turn their phone off before they went on set. So, sometimes we have to redo things, but for the most part, they get on set, do their piece, and they're wrap it up pretty quickly. Barbie, I'm not sure if you saw any big flubs or mistakes.
No flubs. They were all amazing to work with, and in the heat of the moment of all of these appraisals, evaluations going on, and all the people, it was beautiful to work with everyone and the flow of it. So they were a joy. And
the only time they struggled was at the end of day 2. You may have seen that we have our appraisers doing things like coming up on Chesapeake Collectibles and next time on Chesapeake Collectibles. And the second they had to deliver a scripted line, they struggled. They either couldn't remember the 5 words they had to say, or they would just get suddenly very camera shy. So there were a lot of second, third, fourth, and fifth takes on those lines to camera.
So they're better off the cuff.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Barbie, many people, they may or may not know that there are actually 2 sets.
Yes.
So how do you select what items go on set 1 versus set 2?
Well, a couple of different ways. First off, once we confer, Jessica and I confer with Patrick. Patrick makes the call, but a huge part of the decision, and Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, is the size of the object. Set 2 is a smaller set. It's a very large table, but it's not that large compared to set 1, which we can put up bigger displays, heavier items, but also it's a juggle between the items that we're filming on 1 versus filming on 2, just to keep it kind of rotating between the type of thing that we're filming. Does that sound about right, Patrick?
That's the gist of it. I think there's a perception that if you're going to set 2, it's a less important item. The reality is that set 2 is smaller. That crew can get around more quickly, more nimbly, set something up, strike it more quickly. So if you have, for example, the Titanic memorabilia, there's no way we could have filmed that on set 2. It had to go on set 1. The little Betty lamp, that was a small item, but it's one of my favorites from that episode. Set 2 is the perfect location for it because it is, the size of my fist. So it really is dictated by what is happening on set 1. Is set 1 very busy right now? We have a gap on set 2. Let's jump on there, put the item there. So it's part of that sort of flying by the seat of our pants that makes producing an event like this quite exciting. And a little bit stressful, but exciting.
Also, I do like the view from set 2, right? You've got a nice deep background, and it adds a little flavor to it as well. I like that viewpoint.
So, loaded question. What happens after the taping?
Woof.
Take the next day off. I think if you came to MPT on the Monday after taping, you'd find very few people around because all of us have worked all weekend. And we're there long before the doors open, and we're there long after the doors close. But we then start reviewing everything. So, I work with Barbie and our other producers to compile a log of all the segments we shot. And then I just start reviewing them because the truth is, because I'm running around behind the scenes, and so is Barbie, and so is Jessica, we don't see the actual taping of the assessments or the evaluation until we watch the footage later. So I just hear anecdotes of this went really well, this was really fun, the guest was so surprised, Amory did an amazing job. So our job is then to sit down, watch all, it's hundreds of hours of footage because we have multiple camera angles. Start thinking about what themes are emerging, which stories will pair up. I don't want to end up with an episode where we have 2 Babe Ruth cards back to back. So it's a lot of shuffling bits of paper around to go, okay, these 2 stories will pair up. These will pair up well in episode 5. This appraiser appeared in the first 3 episodes. It's time to give somebody else a turn to come into the episode. So it's a lot of what we call a paper edit, which is just kind of getting, okay, these are how our stories are going to lay out. And then we lock ourselves away in an edit suite for, it's been about 4 months now, and still editing away. So it's a lot of fun seeing it all come together. Late nights, hard work, but we wouldn't do it if we didn't enjoy it.
All true.
And you do an amazing job. Everybody on the team does. So we have one more audience question, and then I'm going to turn it to you for some final thoughts for both of you. This is an interesting idea. Is there any way to pre-screen potential items to avoid lugging them if somebody might live miles and miles and hours away?
Yes. So as we get closer to the taping date for 2024, which is June, I've got it written down, June 22nd and 23rd, 2024. Yes. You can go to mpt.org/collectibles right now to sign up for the taping. As we get closer to those taping dates, we will open up for photography submissions, which is you send me a photo of an item that you have. If I think it's interesting, we can have a little chat. And if it truly is something extraordinary, we will offer you a discounted price, a discounted registration. So that's one way for us to pre-screen things, is if you are not sure about whether it would be of any interest to our audience or to our appraisers, you can wait for that. But I have to also reiterate that I am not an appraiser. So you may show me something and I may say, wow, that's amazing, that's fantastic, you should definitely bring that in. And the appraiser may say, oh no, that's something that was mass produced in China. But it's you never know, and you don't know what if the item in your attic is it a lost Leonardo da Vinci, or is it something that was printed in Taiwan 10 years ago? That's the part of the fun. I mean, if Chesapeake Collectibles is often you don't know whether you have a treasure or not. That's why you're there. You're there to find out.
So is there anything that either of you want people to know and we haven't discussed it today, or any kind of final thoughts that you want to wrap things up with tonight? Barbie, I'm going to start with you.
Just to encourage folks to come on out to the taping, sign up, dig through your attic, dig through your basement. You never know. So come on out to the next taping, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Dig through your neighbor's basement, your neighbor's attic. Scour the countryside, see what you can find. I mean, the gentleman in the first episode with the Civil War rifle, and he found that in a farmhouse in Frostburg that he was metal detecting on.
Yeah.
And he asked their permission to bring it on the show because he found the gun but knew nothing about it. So yeah, whatever you may find out there, please bring it. I did also want to say that Chesapeake Collectibles and MPT itself, we depend so much on our viewers, our supporters, our fans to, produce the content that you guys love. And Chesapeake Collectibles is a perfect example of that. We could not make the show without our supporters who bring in items to be evaluated. So your participation is invaluable, but so is your attendance at events like this and your viewership. One of the reasons that Chesapeake Collectibles came back was because the repeats during the pandemic were still sky high. The ratings were extraordinary. So as long as people watch Chesapeake Collectibles, we'll keep making it. So keep watching.
That's great. Oh, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Patrick and Barbie, huge thank you for you two both. And of course, to echo what Patrick already said, we want to thank you, our viewers and supporters. We certainly could not be here without you. Be sure to watch Chesapeake Collectibles when it airs on Mondays at 7:30 p.m., which begins on January 8th. Now, granted, you already watched that episode, but nothing says you can't watch it again. And tell your friends and family. And if you want to join us for the next taping event, as discussed, we will be doing season 12 on June 22nd and 23rd of this year. Head over to mpt.org/collectibles and click the link to register for this year. Now, we want to thank you again for joining us, and happy collecting.
Thank you, Kristen.